Hello, everyone, and welcome to the 19th episode of Host a Pro, where disruptive influencers talk about e-commerce marketing. Today, we have Mike McGrail with us. Hi, Mike.
Hi, Rakenfet.
How are you today?
Yeah, I'm good, thanks. In a very wet and cold Scotland, but that's okay. We don't let it affect us too much.
Okay, for sure. I'll balance it with the sunny Tel Aviv.
I'm jealous. I'm very jealous.
So Mike here is head of content and social for Wim's Family Spirits. It's an e-commerce brand. So today it's the first episode of Host the Pro where I interview someone that works right now within an e-commerce brand. So hooray for that. He has, over 10 years of experience running social media. He had his own agency before, a video production industry and agency, and kind of make the move into talking about whiskey and gin and people drinking them in special places. So, hey, Mike, we're going to speak today about how to run paid social media and how to align it with your organic social media when you're working on one e-commerce brand. Right, Mike?
Yeah, good to go.
Okay, amazing. So just before we diving into all the social media kind of topic, tell us a little bit about your move from being, consultant, running an agency, into moving into an e-commerce brand, working from the field.
Yeah, certainly. So, my kind of digital career goes back to 2008. I worked in agencies. I was very involved in social media in the early days. I had stuff going on in MySpace and Bebo, and Twitter came along, and it was a crazy, crazy time, but super exciting. And then social media and content's just been a constant kind of vein throughout my career. And then I launched a consultancy that turned into an agency back in 2012, called Velocity Digital. And we were doing a lot of organic social there, and dipping our toes into paid. And then a couple of years ago, I launched a video marketing agency alongside that. So that's kind of, I've got this vast experience of different types of clients, tech clients, B2B brands, B2C brands, D2C, all of that type of thing. So really kind of interesting background that I've always tried to keep a little bit different, and I've always liked to strategize but also execute as well, and I think that's really important. So then the pandemic, unfortunately, really hammered my businesses. And then I got offered this fantastic opportunity to go and work where I am now, Weems Family Spirits. So we are a family-run producer of whiskey and gin in Scotland. We're a fairly small team. I have a team of 3 people that work with me on the content and social side of things, which is fantastic. Got someone who's dedicated to paid, someone who's dedicated to organic. They obviously work very closely together. And then I've got a full-time videographer and photographer in the team. So that's absolutely phenomenal. So we have 3 brands. We have Kings Barnes Distillery, which opened in 2014, which produces single malt whiskey. We have Weems Malts, which produces premium single malt blends. I'm not going to go too much into whiskey because the people will love that chat or not love it, but that's slightly different. We use other people's whiskies to create unique, bold flavors.
Okay.
Then we have a gin brand called Darnley's Gin, which is actually 12 years old. So the business goes back a bit. So we have 3 brands that we are selling within one umbrella. So my team and the whole business works right across those 3 brands, and each is distinct and has its own challenges.
Wow, sounds exciting, and I really love to drink a whiskey right now after you described all those stories. Looking forward for the shipment.
Yeah, it's on the way. It's on the
way. So what do you think was the main challenge? You've built your team really, around the social media activity. What was the challenge in building this specific team, and what do you think, how you built it actually works for you?
Yeah, so when I joined, Eleanor was already there. She'd been in the business about 2 months prior to me joining. She's our social media manager, so she handles devises and executes a lot of our paid activity, but also works with the rest of the team to make sure everything's coordinated and does a great job at that. But during last year, I identified a need to expand that so that we could, because at the time, Eleanor was also running all of the organic, so the day-to-day writing, planning, responding. And if you're going to do them both properly, it's a big job for one person. So fortunately, I was allowed to hire somebody else, Sarah. So Sarah very much works on the organic execution side of things and the planning, but also helps me with the content side of things. So a big part of my role is actually the production and direction of content. So Sarah helps me a lot with the production, which is fantastic. And then we have Lee, who is a full-time photographer and videographer. So having all of that resource internally is an absolutely huge advantage. What I'm continually trying to do is just make sure that we're all working in the right way, building that culture within the team, but also we need to be very outwards looking across the business. So we have a sales team. There's actually a dedicated e-commerce team. But it's not all about e-commerce for us as a brand, because like a lot of spirits brands, we need to sell a lot of our products through the what we call the on trade. So that would be bars, restaurants, and the off trade, so bottle shops, but also supermarkets, travel retail, and areas like that. We actually aren't really present in travel retailers yet, because it's a very expensive area to play in, but it may be one for the future. So we need to respect and work with that side of the business as well to try and support them, to drive people to go through what we would term as bricks and mortar. So we want somebody to go into a bar and order our King's Barnes highball, or we want somebody to go and buy a bottle of the whiskey you can see behind me in a store. So there's a big online aspect of it, but the business is probably still 70% bricks and mortar. But we obviously expect the e-commerce to keep pushing forward, and that's a big challenge and opportunity for us right now.
Wow, that sounds fascinating. I mean, eventually you're kind of running three brands, targeting three different personas, buying through different channels right now, right?
Yeah, I mean, we have the kind of the demographics and the personas are so wide, because whiskey generally, people tend to immediately think of men probably over 50 who are drink the same whiskey all the time because they know what they like and that's it. There's nothing, they will never change. But actually, that's a stereotypical view of a whiskey drinker. Like, we know that a high percentage of females between 35 and 40 really enjoy our whiskey. So we have all these different strands of demographics and interests, and then trying to work that all into how we speak and what we do online can be quite tricky. But we're in a great situation there because, like most marketers, we have so much data and we're continually building that and we're continually mining that. But then it's how do you take that and make meaningful actions? I think that's the biggest challenge for a lot of us. So yeah, we have to have content for all three brands, content that we believe suits those audiences. So yeah, there's a lot to do. And then you've got, we launched a new whiskey last week. Any launch day is huge because we want to see a big response across social, across email, across even just pure organic search to the site. So we're like laser focused on that for a few days and making sure all the stats are looking good and tweaking the paid. Because I have the resource in my team, we're very fortunate that Eleanor can watch campaigns unfold in real time and turn things up, turn things off. Next year, I want us to be able to change the creative based on what we're seeing very quickly through A/B, but we're not quite there yet. So it's continually tuning that engine, really, isn't it?
Yeah. And how is the launch, by the way? I mean, launching in December where all the prices just, skyrocket. How is it going?
Yeah. So, I mean, it was very, very interesting. We ran a lead generation campaign through Facebook in advance. So a teaser campaign to get people into our email database for King's Barnes Distillery so that as soon as it was available, we could just boom, try and close those sales out with social. And that worked really, really well. We had a nice cost per lead on that. It was really, really nice to see that happening, and definitely something we'll be doing more of in the future. What we have found though is the more sales, the pure funnel driving sales campaigns we've ran through that on Facebook and Instagram, the price is hugely inflated because, like you say, right now the competition is absolutely massive. So we need to make the call: do we play in those waters? And ultimately when we're doing that, we're up against the massive spirits companies, your Diageos, your William Grants of the world, and that becomes really difficult for us. So we need to make the call, is this worthwhile or is it not? Fundamentally, I still have this strong belief that a lot of our paid activity has to be seen as top of funnel brand building as well. And we're always really delighted with how many people actually engage, but also do come through to the site and then have good visits when they're on the site. It's good sessions. So it's getting the right blend of what do we need from this. But yeah, it's certainly not easy at the moment. And we're now in that period where the organized people have bought their gifts for Christmas, because that's what we're trying to do. Really, it's either people are buying, treating themselves to something, or they want to give you a lovely bottle of whiskey. So we're in that period where the organized people have probably bought already, but we want to keep the noise up so we can get the last minute e-commerce sales, and then get them distributed in time. Although we do have a cut-off date, obviously, for our distribution through the
Sure.
fulfillment center. So it's, again, it's just, I think the word I'll be using a lot on this interview is balance. Just balance,
Yeah. Yeah, it sounds like it, and I really love the lead gen approach you've taken upfront before the launch, and a lot of the times e-commerce brands are kind of debating, should I take a lead gen approach, should I start email marketing? What made it successful in your opinion?
One of the benefits we have, that the whiskey that we launched it's called Distillery Reserve, so it's actually an annual limited edition release. So we know that people want it, but we just need to make sure that everybody's clear on the fact that it is coming. And of course, we can achieve that with email to people that were already there. And the success, a lot of the success is that we did retarget it to people that we knew were engaged. So that was vital, but also because of the success of last year's Distillery Reserve, we knew people would be warm to it. So in a way, it was a campaign that if it had failed, I would have said, wow, like what have we done wrong here? Because that should not have failed. Where we'll come up against wider challenges with trying to do lead generation campaigns is that when we if we're producing a whiskey that isn't a limited edition, all of a sudden you're in there, you're fighting against the whiskies at the same price range. And quite often those are the ones that have the higher awareness because they're just bigger brands. We could be up against Johnny Walker, for example, trying to
Yeah.
get that sale. So we know that when we do limited editions or single cask releases, that most campaigns are going to be effective. That doesn't mean it's easy, and that doesn't mean that we're just going to, have this massive rush and excitement and wow, that was so easy that we've sold the stuff out. But what we do know is if we turn that off, then the sales are not going to be as monumental in the first, like that day one. We're always keen on that day one. We want a big day one. We want good sales. We want to make a lot of noise, and then we keep the follow up going to try and keep that graph up at the right level.
Yeah. What I'm hearing is a lot of, we work on the brand a lot. So once we reach to those campaigns, they will actually work. We need to obviously differentiate ourselves. We can't be like the Johnny Walkers. We need
Yeah.
something, more special that kind of creates this FOMO of, oh, if I'm not going to buy this, it will end. It's like a kind of a boutique kind of approach. And also something which is very operative. You had this, email marketing under your hand, the content writing that you could use just very, very in an agile way that will support this campaign, right?
Exactly. The content was ready to go. And then we have a stack of follow-up content. So we know what tends to work at launch. It tends to be really simple product. This is what we're selling you. Here's what you will get. And some, notes about the taste of the taste and the aroma of the whiskey. Then we'll follow up with some more in-depth, perhaps geekier content, because that might help convert the whiskey geeks. We love them, but these guys know their stuff. These women and men, they really know their stuff. So they want to dig a bit deeper. So we've got some short video with the actual man, the head distiller who makes the whiskey. He's tasting it. He's talking about it. So we know we are starting to build clear pictures of what works at what phase and what really doesn't. And because we have Lee in the team, we're quite agile now that we can say, actually, let's go and make more of this. But we're far from perfect in that process. We can do more. and it just is getting the right process in place. But we also know that sometimes a non-professional photo can work as well as one that we've got the lights out and all that type of stuff. It depends on the context massively, and we're trying to create different content for each platform across social, and that's vital. One approach can just be really can fail sometimes, but I think again it's hard to do that because it takes time. It does take time.
For sure. What would be the best tip you can give, growing e-commerce brands like yourselves, managing paid social with content and organic social together in the right way? What would be, the fundamentals you think they must have?
Yeah, I think that a lot of people think that as long as they're running some paid, they'll be okay, and they don't give the attention to organic that it deserves. Now, we know that organic is increasingly difficult. Organic reach is just gone off a cliff, and there's so many reasons for that, and it's painful. It can be really hard, but you still need to have that organic bedrock of great presence and a highly engaged presence. There's a lot of brands out there who put content out and it gets comments and they just never answer, and that's really bad. So if you imagine that I put you see an ad for Kingsbarns in your feed on Facebook, and it's the first time you've ever heard of us, quite often the customer journey will lead them to click through to the Facebook page or maybe Instagram, whatever. And if that's not great content and highly engaged, you may well think, do you know what? I don't like that brand. And more consumers want a real affinity, a real connection to the brand. They want to know that there's real humans behind it. They want to know the stories. So if you're not running a great organic alongside the paid, then you will definitely see a lack of success with the paid social. But I also think it's so vital that people don't think that social media is a silver bullet. It has to be a part of this 360 approach that includes search, that includes email, that includes non-social paid search, and not just digital. We need to. There's still a huge place for making noise in more traditional areas. Just make sure it's all working together. And I think one of the big problems you can see in a lot of businesses is that e-commerce doesn't speak enough to the social team, or the sales team don't speak enough to social, and vice versa. So it's trying to make sure everybody's on the same page. And one of the biggest issues you can get when that isn't the case is with attribution. If people are using different UTM links for different campaigns and you're not unified there, then all of a sudden you say, well, we don't 100% know how this worked because we're not singing from the same hymn sheet on this stuff. So yeah, but to summarize, don't neglect your organic social just because you're running paid, because the two are like best friends and they have to get on well.
Yeah, it's the marketing blend that wins, and it's the marketing team that knows how to work together wins. And obviously, working on the same attribution definitely helps measuring all of this.
Definitely, and we've had issues because of iOS's approach to the new iOS's approach to not giving the data over to Facebook, etc. So attribution is getting harder all the time as well. So it's I think us digital marketers we get a lot of roadblocks, but we seem to get through them, and it makes it exciting, if not terrifying at times.
For sure, there isn't a boring moment.
No.
Mike, thank you so much. It was a pleasure, and thank you for sharing everything on Wim's family spirits and your experience and your thoughts about how to run a team and paid social and organic social and on the marketing blend that has to do with it. Toda rabba. Thank you.
No, thanks so much for having me. It's great, and I hope people enjoy the show.
Yeah. Hope to see you next time.
Thanks. See you later.